So you have a lot of pictures out here.
Well, I didn't get very many out. I have boxes, and I haven't gone through it
Uh-huh.
since we moved, you know.
Uh-huh.
And there's some here that I thought you might kind of enjoy looking at, but I didn't know.
Oh, yeah. Is that your husband?
No, that's my son.
Oh, your son. Okay. Joseph, is that right?
Joe.
Joe.
The only
okay.
boy I have.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And you have
Five
girls.
girls.
Okay.
You saw that.
Make sure. And you were born in
Durango.
Oh, in Durango.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And your parents were Mendenhall, is that right?
Charles and Nettie.
Okay.
T.A. Mendenhall.
Okay. And you grew up in Durango?
No, we lived there till I was 2.
Mm-hmm.
Then they moved to Montrose.
Oh, okay.
And my father and his father had a meat market.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know how long they were there because I wasn't much past 2 when we moved to Lake City.
Oh, okay. So you were about 2 when you moved to Lake
Uh-huh.
City. Okay. So that would have been just about the turn of the century, huh?
Well, I was born in 98.
Right. Right. You said
And,
you were going to be 95 in December, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And let me see. My father was county treasurer in Lake City, Hinsdale.
Okay.
When we were little girls, I can remember Mr. Henry, Mother had cleaned us up and sent us up to walk on with Daddy.
Uh-huh.
And Mr. Henry setting us up on his store counter.
Uh-huh.
And he was our neighbor. And you know his son Charles Henry
Yes.
was in the courthouse here.
Yeah, right.
Well, Charles and I grew up together.
Oh, okay. So you went to school in Lake City.
Uh-huh.
And was Lake City pretty small then, like it is now, or?
There's no comparison. I don't know how the schools run, but we had the high school
Uh-huh.
and the
you did?
kindergarten and everything.
Uh-huh.
And I started school there
Mm-hmm.
and finished there.
Mm-hmm. And then, did you get married, or you became a teacher?
No, I took the teacher's examination
Okay.
on the last year, you
Uh-huh.
know, how we do those days.
Uh-huh.
You couldn't do it today.
Right, right.
However, I wish we had the little red schoolhouse back. And then when I think over what's going on in school, that wouldn't work.
No, I guess
It wouldn't work.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then I got a school at the Carpenter Resort. That's before the dam went in.
Oh, okay.
And I have misplaced those pictures. I wish I had them. I had them in that cookie jar over there. And when the girls did all the picking up, why, they're misplaced. They're not lost, they're just misplaced.
So the Carpenter Resort was,
There's a big hotel there, and
where was it?
it was this side of Saponero.
Oh,
And I
alright.
don't know how many
Alright,
miles.
okay.
And they had a big hotel
Uh-huh.
and cabins.
And past Neversink. So it's past
Uh-huh.
Neversink and this side of
Uh-huh.
Saponero.
And I know my schoolroom was, you walk down where all these cabins are, and a sidewalk in front.
Uh-huh.
And I had one of the cabins for my school.
Oh.
And I only taught until Christmas
Uh-huh.
because the flu came and they closed all the schools.
That was,
You
must have
know,
been 1918.
1918.
Yeah.
And my husband had, we weren't married then, I didn't hardly know him. He had shipped cattle to Denver, or sheep, I guess. And when he came back, he was quarantined in the top of the old Levita Hotel for I don't know how long.
Oh.
And so when I came to Saponero to go home to Lake City when they closed my school, everything was closed, you know, with that flu.
Yeah.
Why, I got my ticket all right, and they didn't say a word to me, and then they said, you'd better call Mr. Heath in Lake City, and he was my professor.
Uh-huh.
I'd been ring bearer at their wedding when I was just 3. And he said, my dear girl, I don't know what you're going to do or where you're going to go, but you can't come here. We aren't letting anybody come into Lake City now. Just the train crew, you know, and what had to come back and forth. So I had friends in Powderhorn, and I called the man that later became my husband.
Oh, yeah.
And he came and got me, and we lived there. I stayed there until I could go home.
Did anybody in Lake City get the flu?
Oh yes.
So the quarantine didn't do any good anyway, right?
Oh no.
They could have let you in. You didn't get
My
the flu.
father took a spike team. You know what a spike team is, with the 3 horses.
Oh, okay.
And a sled, and went to one of the high country mines and got our next door neighbor out. They slid him down the mountain to get onto this. Of course, he couldn't go up the mountain. And then brought him into Lake City with the horses, and he died. But Mother had us all go out on the porch and run up and down the porch and get a little fresh air every day, and we didn't take that flu.
That's good.
There, I did there in Powderhorn, though.
Oh, you did? Were you very sick?
We were all awfully sick. There was about 11 of us down at once.
Oh, my goodness.
And Mrs. Fred Gray and her husband put on masks and came down and nursed us through.
Yeah, that's incredible, huh? That was a terrible,
Wasn't it?
worldwide.
Even after, then after Harry and I were married, we were married New Year's Eve.
And this was Harry
Dunn.
Right. And what did he do?
His father had a cattle ranch in Powderhorn,
Oh, okay. All right.
and he just helped his father. And so, now let me think. I get confused sometimes.
Oh.
It's a long time ago, you know.
It is a long time ago.
And we lived there for a while. And I was trying to think where we were. I guess we moved to Lake City. And my father had a little ranch, so on the Lake Fork, and he sold it to Mr. Dunn, and so then we moved there and lived there before my oldest daughter was born. And then we had 3 little girls, and he came down with sugar diabetes. At that time, he was working in Olathe, and the doctor said it had taken a heavy hold on him, and it at the wrong age, 21 or 2. And they couldn't do anything for him. So he just gradually got worse and worse and worse, and we had no money. So we went home, you know, like you'll do.
Right.
And we went home to his folks. Well, they had all they could take care of. And I think there were 10 children in the Dunn family. In fact, I know there were. And my mother was the mother of 8, 6 living. So, but I went to a home to my mother, and he had to stay there. We did everything, and our friends and neighbors were so good to us, you know. But he just got worse and worse and worse. So he went home to his people, and I went home to mine. And of course kept my little girls.
Right.
And Lake City was a wonderful place to live, let me tell you, with all our friends, you know, and everything. I took in washing. I went to the mine and cooked for miners. Took my babies with me. And
do they remember that? Do they remember some of that?
my oldest girl does. I'm sure she does.
Yeah.
And of course, I had that certificate, you know.
Right.
And I remember, then I was given an honorary life in Denver. Mrs. She was related to the Spencer. Mrs. I knew I'd forget names.
Oh, don't worry about that.
Well, anyway, she and I went to Denver to the convention, and I never saw so many book agents. They were all over the Capitol building, you know, just everywhere. We had a lovely time. And of course, Mother kept my babies. And she said to me, that we were going in to meet this group of people. And when we came out, I had had more fun in there, talking to who I thought were the book people, buying books. And we had talked about the Hoover Dam, and I happened to have helped my uncle. He was the editor of the Lake City Silver World at that time.
Oh.
And I had helped him in the office, setting type, and then grandmother and I would read his editorials in the mornings early, you know. And they quizzed me on the Hoover Dam. Well, I was up on it, you know.
Yeah.
And I answered
Just been built, huh?
I didn't know this was even going on.
Yeah.
And when we walked out, she looked at me and she said, "What do you think the State Board of Education thinks of you?" And I said, "Oh, don't tell me that was the State Board of Education," because we just had fun, you know, and that little quiz and a few things, and that's when they gave me my life certificate.
Well, that's great.
And I know then when I came back and got another school, I taught then at Spencer.
Oh, at Spencer. Okay.
I went into Dr. Rule and before I put out my applications, and I said, "I just don't feel right applying for these schools, Dr. Rule, with just the second grade certificate." See, I hadn't gone to Western.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. You
I hadn't gone to college.
Yeah, right.
And he said, "Well, I don't know why you don't." He says, "You just go right ahead and put in your application." And I got the school and I taught there.
Now, where is Spencer?
It's this side of Powderhorn, about 15 miles.
Oh,
Maybe
okay.
not that far.
Okay. I know where Cathedral is, because you taught
Well,
at
you know,
Cathedral,
Spencer
too,
at
right?
that time was a very wealthy school district.
Oh.
Spencer and there's another over there, and they hadn't pulled up the railroad yet to Lake City, and they got all that railroad money, and it was a rich district, and they treated me wonderful.
Now, did you have a one-room school?
Had a one-room school, and I had my 3 little children, and another little girl, and another boy, and just the 5.
Oh, how nice.
Once in a while, I'd have 6.
Yeah.
And it was just great, you
Oh,
know.
I bet.
We had a nice teacherage, and the school, it's still standing over there. I'd love to go back and see it.
Oh, yeah.
But my girls have.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, I taught there then 1 year. And then, of course, in the meantime, I had divorced my husband. And in the meantime, he had died. And then I met Grant. I knew Grant's father in Lake City for years.
Yeah.
He was a sheriff up
Harry,
there.
is that right? Is it
Harry Youmans.
Okay.
And I lived next door to him. And I was afraid nights a lot. And he'd say, "Now, my window's open, and if you ever get afraid, you just come and call me." But I knew him so well, but I didn't know Grant. That seems funny to me.
Now, he had to raise those children by
Yes,
himself, didn't he? With
he
his
did.
parents' help? Is that right? His parents came out from
From New York.
New York. Okay. Yeah, and helped.
And they had a hard. Then the mother died, you see, and left 7.
I know.
And Fred was when he was born was when she died, you see.
Oh, okay.
And
And your husband wasn't very old.
no,
4 years
no,
old or something.
he the only memory he has of his mother. He said he just tried so hard to remember his mother. He said that his father had the planing mill in Lake City. Grandfather, you know, was a timberman.
Right.
And he did well financially. They had it hard, but it would be hard, you know, with all the 7 children.
Yes. Yeah.
But the girls worked out, and they went to school too in Lake. That was one privilege they all had, was at school through the 12th, you know.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, well, they couldn't have gone to Gunnison. It would have been too far.
what is it?
It would have been too far to go to Gunnison.
Well, we had a wonderful school.
Yeah.
You know, Mr. Heath is one of the leading professors in the country. I loved him.
Yeah.
You know, the school's named for him now.
Yeah.
And, I went to him for lots of troubles. He and Mrs. Heath both. Well, now I'm off my subject.
Well, you were telling me about your husband's only memory of his mom.
Oh, he said he was standing in the window, or she was standing in the window, and he wanted her to watch him take the cant hook and roll that log down into the mill, you know. And he said that's the only memory he has of his mother. But the grandmother came, and she took good care of them, best she could.
Right.
And they had it awfully hard.
I like that.
Then he bought that ranch on the Powderhorn, or the Savoia. And the family moved over there. And Daisy kept house there most. She's the youngest girl, you know. She was Mrs. McDonough.
Right. Right.
And she stayed there and took care of the home and everything until she married Bill McDonough.
Oh.
And I remember being at Foster's home in Powderhorn when they were just going together and meeting them.
Yeah. And so, then, when did you meet your husband?
There in Powderhorn.
Okay. Were you teaching then at?
No, we had these Fosters.
Uh-huh.
Were good friends, you know. They lived here in Gunnison a long time.
Wally and.
No, Ernest Foster.
Ernest. Okay.
And my father and he had been friends as boys. And then we lived at Gateview.
Oh, I know where Gateview is. Yeah.
See, we lived there 5 or 7 years, I believe it was. It's the old Mendenhall Ranch. And the roads were awfully bad those days. So we had come in the meantime. I'm getting my stories kind of messed up. I told my son I would.
That's all right.
He, of course, I married and had the 3 little girls. No, there I didn't then when we lived at Gateview.
Right.
When we were still just, the railroad ran through there, you know. And we kept transient. Great big house. And Mother kept transient, and Kellogg's sawmill was up there, up that canyon. And those men would come and go, you know, and they'd often stay all night at our house, going or coming.
Now, was this before you married Mr. Yeomans?
Oh, yes.
This was
that
when
was
you were
before I
married?
was ever married.
Oh, okay.
See, I'm kind of confused here.
All right.
I was just afraid I would be.
Okay, that's all right.
But because when we lived at Gateview, we had to go to Lake City and board and room for 1 month, and then my father bought a home.
Oh, okay. So
And-
you could go to school.
Uh-huh.
Oh, all right.
And we went to school there.
And that's when you'd be nervous at night.
No, I wasn't then. I had all my little brothers and sisters. See, Mother was with us. And a part of the time, and then my daddy'd be down on the ranch part of the time. But let's see. I graduated there, and Ruth Milstead Carey now. She is older than I, quite a bit, and she still lives in Orange, California.
Is that right?
And we correspond. When we go to Lake City, you know, to this old timers deal every year. Well, this year, Paul Ramsey and I were the 2 oldest ones. And Ruth Carey would have been, but she can't come any longer.
Right.
And I used to substitute for her in her primary room
Oh.
in my last year of high school. And I took, if these things were all put together, it would be better. I'm not getting things
That's
right.
all right. Don't worry about it.
I took arithmetic that winter with the 8th graders to get ready for this teacher's examination. Mr. Heath thought that would be a good thing, and it was.
Yeah.
And because I was up then on the arithmetic better,
Right.
the algebra wouldn't have done too much for me.
Right.
But anyway, now where was I?
Well, tell me a little bit about when you did meet Mr. Yeomans.
Well, I was. I met him at Foster's home. They had a big dinner, community dinner, and he was there, and I met him there. And then when Harry and I were married, they had a big chivalry, and everyone in the valley came, you know. And he was there, and they were all laughing at us, and it was just a fun group, you know.
Right.
And of course,
He'd never been married before,
No.
right? And he
Oh,
was
no.
older than you were. 5.
yes, he was 7 years older than
Oh,
I.
7. Okay.
And when my girls were little, and I lived in Lake City, I was up at his cousin's. Henry Hoffman is in Lake City. It was his cousin, and he had the store there, and I traded with him. And I was in there buying groceries, and I had all 3 of my little girls. And Henry wanted us to get acquainted, you know. We enjoyed one another so much, because knowing his father so long, you know.
Right.
And that just, then when I was teaching in Spencer, he came through with a herd of sheep in the dead of winter.
Yeah,
He'd been over at Viverell's. She wintered those sheep, you know, in the winter. And he couldn't raise enough hay to keep them all the year. So I invited, he had a lot of hired men, and I couldn't invite them in.
Right.
And it was bitter cold. They were wrapped clear to their knees, and they looked terrible. I invited him to come in and have dinner with us, the noon dinner.
Yeah.
They had gotten me a nice new range for my cabin, and it was nice there. And he did, and we became good friends. We were friends anyway, in a way, almost through our families, you know.
Right.
And he was so good to me. And he liked my little girls, and they all liked him.
That's important.
That's an unusual thing, you know.
Yeah, it is.
And came Christmas, he got them such a beautiful little rocking chair. He was always, I thought, so sensible with them. And then I taught at Cathedral 2 years.
Oh, okay.
And that's in Hinsdale County.
Right.
And
But it's still a country school, right? It was a country school, yeah.
it isn't anymore. Of course, they
no,
closed
right,
all the schools.
right.
I thought that was terrible.
Right.
But I still do, but I'm old-fashioned.
Well, there's
In a way I am, and in a way I can see 2 sides.
Well, you always gain something and you lose something.
Nowadays, if we lived there and had the school, mothers would be gone. They wouldn't be home working and keeping the home and the children.
Yeah, that's true.
Now look at Lolene. She never has stayed home, that girl. And she's worked. She just couldn't. The young mothers can't take it.
Yeah.
They can't take them.
And sometimes they just really need the money, too.
Oh, they do.
Yeah.
They do. We did too, but
Yeah, I know.
of course we had everything in the world to eat, you know.
Yeah.
Everything. They'd go, my husband, well, then we were married in Lake City at my mother's home.
Oh.
My brother stood up with us. And I had lots of trouble with my husband before I left him. It was just impossible, you know. He'd lost reason and honor. I don't want to say anything about my little girl's father.
I understand that.
And he was a good person for Harry. But that's a terrible disease, too.
Yeah, it is.
Sugar diabetes.
Yeah. And sometimes it affects the brain.
It does,
Yeah.
I think. And we lived 60 years in that house. I'll show it to you.
Okay. Oh, yeah, there it is. Yeah. Now I saw a picture in the newspaper of you two standing in front of it. I think
Oh,
it was
you
in
did?
the Silver World. Yeah. Yeah, it's
Oh,
at the library. I went and looked in the Youmans file, and they.
Oh, you did.
Yeah, they had.
You remembered well.
Yeah.
Well, he was a good person. And those little girls, every girl I had loved Grant's memory. When he was sick here, you know, they'd come anywhere. They all came from all directions, and they all loved Grant. He made them respect him. He was not really strict, you know, but
Right.
they had to mind. Ruthie, he never touched one of them but Ruthie, my oldest daughter. She lives now in Arizona. She lost her husband this year. But she was sassing me, I guess. And he said, "You can't sass your mother, young lady." And she ran from him, and he got her and he popped her 2 or 3 times. That's the only time that all those children.
And you had a son and 2 more daughters with your husband.
Grant and I.
With Grant, yeah.
And oh, how he did love those children. And he was a good father. He hadn't had but very little schooling, only the knocks of life, what it could give you. But he's always good in business. And he bought the home in Powderhorn in 25. He wasn't married. And he had no plans right then of getting married. But then we were married in 30. And had the 3 little girls. He was at sheep camp. We knew that baby was coming, and I wouldn't go to town. I wanted to stay home. And Mr. Schecker is an old timer, and probably what saved our marriage, he had 3 old men past 83 living with him when we were married, and I had those 3 little girls. I said that's what saved our marriage. And I never saw 3 old men and 3 little girls get along like they did. Grandpa lived with us, of course, Grandpa Youmans. He died there. And I loved him always. And we had a happy home there.
That's nice. Yeah. And so your husband, mostly he did cattle, but he did do some sheep, right?
First we had sheep. And it was the labor. Oh, labor was killing us, And they'll work for you 11 months out of the year.
Yeah.
Then they'll say that there's death in their family, and they've got to go. It doesn't matter where the sheep are or what condition things are in. You lose him.
Yeah.
And it was hard on Grant, that riding in those hills. My son today is so thankful that we're out of there.
Yeah.
Because that's changing so fast.
Yeah.
He just got home from Cortez yesterday. He went to that Taylor grazing meeting. My husband was always on that Taylor grazing board,
Yeah.
One of the first ones. He and Mr. Winery and all those old timers,
Yeah. Were Vaders on that too?
No, I don't think David was on that.
Oh, okay.
He wasn't at first. He might have been later.
Oh, okay.
But David was on nearly everything.
Yeah.
And Ruth was my neighbor, We raised our children side by side, and although I love those girls.
And so when you lived in Powderhorn, when did you started?
We were married in 1930.
And
I had the school in Iowa, and I was going to teach.
You let married women teach?
And I had no intention of not teaching that school. So when we got married and got moved in, it was quite a job, believe you me. And there were lots of things wrong with that house, and we were working on it. But I fully intended to go take my little girls and move to Spencer, to Iowa. I never dreamed that I wouldn't teach that way. And when it came up, and we had company. And I said, oh yes, I was going to teach again. And Grant said, you are? Well, I didn't think anything about that. Oh, no, sir. He would not let me teach that school. So I had to resign the Iola school and stay home and go to work.
Yeah. Was it hard being a ranch wife?
What?
Was it hard being a ranch wife?
Oh, no, I loved it. I love it here. People think it's lonely.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. Were you ever lonely?
Oh, yes. And don't you get lonely anywhere?
Yes.
I've been lonely when I was surrounded with people. At times you can be,
Right.
No, I don't. I love to read. I can't read like I did. My eyes won't let me anymore.
Yeah.
But I love to read, and I like the television. Not too much.
Right.
I like the news. And I'm not a sports, only for golf. I like golf.
Yeah. Have you ever played golf?
No, I never have.
Neither.
My daughters do.
Uh-huh.
I have a daughter in Arizona that she just plays golf all the time and cards. And I quit playing cards when the girls were little in Lake City, we had card parties up there,
So
and
just-
because it bothers me, I get so mixed up.
Oh, no, it's nice. It's a nice story. It doesn't have to be in order. It really doesn't. No, it's nice.
But it's been a happy life, and I don't think our hardships hurt us.
What kind of hardships did you have?
Just
Your
poverty a little bit. Well, we always ate. There never was a time we didn't have enough to eat, you know.
Yeah. Even during the Depression, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. Of course, you were married during the Depression.
Yes.
So-
Well, we had our own meat, you know, and we had a separator, and I had milk cows and butter, and I had chickens and eggs.
Yes. And did you have a root cellar to put?
Oh, beautiful. That's something we don't have here. And my daughter-in-law over on the road, you know,
Yeah.
she's in the big house on the road.
Uh-huh.
We,
In that
with
white
those
house.
great big
Yeah.
basements. And we've got a basement here, but they're all warm. And we've had to work over. My son has worked over plumbing on every place we live. They just filled in here. You can see out of the backyard. It's so torn up. And I have to keep my potatoes. I'm no potato eater anyway.
Yeah.
But I have to keep what I want in the refrigerator and my vegetables. But we'd go to the lower country, Grant, and we'd take the children. He had a new big truck at that time. And his sister lived in Cedar Ridge. We'd go down, and he'd take her a lamb. And, we'd have such good times down there. And, you know, we'd always go when the corn was just about ready. My niece always say, well, now I can tell by the silk when the corn is ready. and they always had lots of chickens, you know, and everything. And they always kept a beef and a milk cow. And we just load up with everything. A load of apples. I remember coming home with a load of fruit. It was apples partly. I can't remember. He must have had grain in. And the three little girls on top. And there's a road down there at the halfway house. It was pretty bad at that time. It's gone now. And we'd come home with all that load and put it in that cellar and be just lovely all winter long.
Isn't that nice? Yeah.
And you know there's nothing nicer than a root cellar,
Yeah.
if it's a good one.
Yeah.
But here we don't have it.
And things tasted better than when they come today from the supermarket.
They do, don't
I
they?
know. Tomatoes just don't even have any taste.
They don't to me.
Peaches don't. I mean, yeah.
Well, the peaches, if we could get them, now we like the lake peaches at Cedar Edge, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
And I have a niece there now. Grant's niece still lives there. She and her family, and he brings us up the best tomatoes. Her son.
Yeah.
But I don't believe he brought many tomatoes this year. But I'm not overly fond of tomatoes anymore. I don't know why. The acidity probably.
Yeah.
But
Now, is that the house you lived in?
come over and look at it.
Okay, all right.
It's nice. Oh, but
Well, and plus, you were born and raised in the mountains.
I
in
love it.
Colorado.
And I love it here.
Yeah.
And they'll say, well, how do you take these winters?
Yeah.
You know, and now I'm not reading like I have. I'm not sure I'm going to take it this winter.
Yeah.
But I still have my eyesight and my glass. But I've had both eyes operated on, and they can't do any more for me. But I can read with this good, if I don't overdo it. You know.
Yeah.
And as slow as I am now, you know.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm so slow. And I do every bit of my own work, except some of the. I ask my daughter. They call me every Saturday or Sunday. I have the other one in Alaska. She's coming down to Arizona for the winter. They're too rough up there for her.
Yeah.
And she.
Weren't they ever rough for you in Powderhorn?
What?
Weren't winters ever rough for you in Powderhorn?
I was too busy. You know, when we first went there, I helped with the school music. And, oh, you don't know the meals I put on.
Yeah.
And, you know, baked our own bread, our own rolls, our own cinnamon rolls.
Yeah.
I've always been quite a cook. I ran a bakery in Lake City one summer. And I didn't know what to do, so I got this house for cleaning it for 2 months. And I earned it. It was dirty. But, you know, anybody can scrub and get things clean.
That's true.
And I owned a bakery. I had a good range, and I knew how to cook. And I didn't have any money to buy the groceries, but I went up to Henry Hoffman and Mr. I'll think of his name, Harkness. And I asked him for credit, and I got all of the credit. And I never abused a nickel of it. And I didn't make any money, but we lived good, and I paid all the bills. So it was a hard summer. Then that winter, I went to the mine at Capital City and lived with I had 2 uncles, and they were mining up there. And there were 10 men at this, where I was with my older uncle. And I cooked for those 10 men that winter. And I got $50 a month in our boarding room.
My goodness.
But, you know, he was good to me. He was such a dear old uncle. And the other one was, too. He lived what is in the post office now at Capital City. And he did his own, and he was killed there. He rode onto a blast, killed he and his horse. After I had left there, thank goodness. But anyway, you see, there was no place to spend any money. We were snowed in.
Yeah, that's true. And that didn't bother you, being snowed in up there?
Not much. When the children got real sick once, I thought that my daughter had gotten some rough on rats, maybe. You know, they put out that rat poisoning in those places. And they'd been up to the old schoolhouse and playing around. And I could see them, you know. And so we could call by phone. And Dr. Cummings said, just give them castor oil. Well, I gave the poor child castor oil. My father had come up, and he sat up with me that night with this child. She was awfully sick, the one in Alaska. And we just thought it was poisoning she'd gotten, you know. Well, then the next day, one of the ladies came in with her husband on one of the ore sleds. They were hauling ore out of there with these big 4 horses on these big sleds. And she came in. It was a pretty day, and you know, warm winter days are nice. And she was sitting there talking to me. She'd had lunch with me, and she said, "What's that pink on the floor?" And I looked over there, and it was a little pill. And I'd gotten a new can of pills, just for cathartics, you know. And that child had opened that new, and she'd taken those pills. She thought it was candies, and that's what ailed her. Well, as soon as I know what ailed her, there might have been pretty bad repercussions from that, but she didn't have rough on that.
That's good.
Oh, you go through some experiences.
Yeah, you do, don't you?
And you see, I didn't have to have noon lunch. I had to put up lunches. They'd take them all to the mines. But that was an early job. My uncle called me about 4:30, and he'd have the fires all going. But I'd have half the lunches fixed the night before. I made lots of pies those days, something I don't even make anymore.
You don't? I love homemade pie, though.
I love it, too. Anyway, the winter was awfully rough. We didn't get out that winter. Well, children and I didn't get out at all winter. And I saved my wages, see. Didn't have any expenses.
Right.
We didn't need any clothing, only what we had to keep warm. And we were watching up the road one day, and we could see that big Golconda mine was way above us. We couldn't see it, but it was still far above.
Yeah.
But men were working there, and they were snowed in too. The only way they knew night from dark was when they see through the pipe at, noon, or when the light came.
Yeah.
And anyway, I saw this movement way up the road, and I thought, well, that's a dog, or looked like a dog.
Uh-huh.
And the three little girls, we all watching it. We all were. And I didn't have any glasses to look. So the more I watched, the more I thought, that's a man. Well, when he got closer, I could see it was a man, and he was crawling. So I couldn't trust those kids. They were too little.
Yeah.
My oldest girl, I could, Ruthie. I said, now will you be good and keep the two right together and stay right here? It was warm out on the steps. Yeah. And watch Mother, I'm going to go meet that man. Because I knew he was a hurt person. Yeah. And I had to go, very near a block, I would guess. I got my things on, and I went up there, and he'd been in a snowslide. He'd lost everything, his bed, and he didn't want it. All he wanted to do was get out of that country.
Yeah.
And he couldn't talk hardly. And I helped him until we got to the steps. And he could sit on the step, and I said, now, and the children were good. They watched us coming.
Yeah.
And I said, now, if you'll sit here, I'll go in and get some hot coffee. And he cried like a little baby. And I got the coffee hot. We kept the stove out and the coffee. I don't know why. I didn't drink it. And neither did my uncle. But everybody have a cup of coffee that dropped in, the men that were hauling. And he couldn't hold his coffee cup. I had to hold it for him to drink. Well, about that time, my uncle got home. And then the men came, and they helped him in the house, and they got him to Lake City. And he said he didn't want his bed, he didn't want anything about that country.
Had he worked up at the other mine? Huh?
At the Gauconda.
Yeah. Was he the only one who got caught in that? Or?
Yes, the only one, evidently. I don't know how. He must have tried to walk out or slide out. I don't know how it was.
Yeah. Gosh.
Those are treacherous times. They really are.
Yeah.
But we weren't sick all winter. We didn't know what it was to have a cold, or anything.
Isn't that nice? Yeah.
It was a happy winter. My mother came up and stayed with me a few nights. And we heard kittens crying. I had a cat and kittens. I had one of those big stoves, that they have in the mines with an oven on each side.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they're lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, they're hard to keep up, and they're dirty, and you have to have cold.
Yeah.
But, I didn't know anything else.
Right.
And we'd hear this crying in the night, and there was a bright moonlight night on the snow, so she and I got up. We didn't wake the children. And we went out there, and it was a red fox. Oh, he was pretty. You'll see just as pretty things as you will bad things when you're isolated like that. And he was trying to get those kittens, you see. And he didn't. Mother and I we went out and threw sticks at him and things, but she said he might turn on us, but she didn't think so.
Yeah.
But he still wanted to come back and get the kittens.
Yeah.
So we had to move them in.
Yes, I bet he did. Foxes are really determined,
Oh, it was. And pretty. Oh,
yes,
he was pretty.
Yes.
Just beautiful.
Yeah.
So would you drink a cup of hot chocolate or
Oh,
something?
sure. That would be nice.
She asked me a few times. I don't seem to take much interest in it.
Yeah. Well, it's hard when you don't.
Oh, I've got so many boxes of pictures in here.
Well, show me your pictures.
We'll put this where we can
Okay.
reach it. They're not extra good, but the boys like them. This is the three little girls and I at Cathedral.
Oh.
Dick
Don't
Wilson
they
bought
look
that
cute?
schoolhouse and moved it down to Powderhorn.
Oh, okay.
So when he got it all set up, they're using it for a night cabin when they're calving and working with the cattle. He said, I've got to have the school mom down there. So I had to go down and he took my picture after he moved it. But
How neat.
This is before Grant and I were married.
Oh. Well, it was nice looking. You know, I read in his obituary he was called the patriarch of the Saboya Valley. Is that true?
I don't know. I've forgotten. He was a darling. He was so good to me and those little girls. You don't know. Oh, I love Grant. And now I don't care because I'm not there anymore because he's gone.
Yeah.
These are the two boys that graduated from the 8th grade under me.
Oh.
Glenn Bowers and his brother Lester.
Oh, okay.
They each got their 8th grade diplomas.
Oh, how neat.
I was county superintendent of schools in Hinsdale.
Uh-huh.
And I graded the Staley boys' 8th grade papers.
Now, did you live in that house for over 50 years?
60 years.
60 years.
Just 60 years.
My goodness.
You know, I'm really old. Do you know Kenny Ashwood? He's my grandson.
I know. I saw that.
Well, this is his wife and the little bit boy now. Oh, he's precious.
Oh.
And
Yeah, they live a couple of blocks down from me. I walk by their house all the time because I
they bought a
walk around.
motorhome, you know.
Oh, they did.
That Kathy is a go-getter.
I'll say.
I'll tell you, she, the lady next door, what's her name? She keeps children.
Peggy
Uh-huh.
Arnold.
Arnold, that's right. And he's 4 now. Oh, he's cute. Of course, this is great-grandma talking. We're crazy about him. He said, you know, Grandma, when I'm home, Mom and I are home, Mama's the boss. When I'm over at Peggy's, Peggy's the boss. And when Daddy's home, he's the boss of all. So Peggy had, she had so many little ones, and she fed them toast with powdered sugar on or something. And he blew the powdered sugar, and it went all over. And I guess she scolded him pretty strong. And he got up and left the table and went in, sat on the couch, and he didn't eat, you know, or anything. You don't know how that worried that little one. It worried me. And he said, and then Peggy came in and she says, well, Patrick, you must come in and eat your dinner. She said, Peggy had to scold you because that went all over. He was just broken-hearted over that. So the other day he said to me, he'd been in Dutch again. I don't know what it was he did. But his mother, he kept saying he'd been bad. And she said, I don't like to hear that, being bad all the time.
Yeah.
So she was trying to teach him to say, I've made a mistake.
Yeah.
And he said, he talks to me over the phone. He says, oh, grandmother, I made a mistake. And I said, what'd you do, honey? Oh, he said, and I said, and are you in Dutch with Mom and Daddy both? Oh, yes. So I was telling his mom, she comes up here, she's babysitting a little tiny baby. She's got her own little baby, and she's at 2, you know. And they are that age, those 2s, the terrible 2s.
Yes.
There's nothing they're not in.
Yes.
And she has Michael, and Michael, then she'll teach him a game, take care of those little ones, and then one day I didn't know they were going to stay for lunch, and I didn't have anything. So I'll make a big kettle of stew and freeze the stew in little containers, and maybe beans or whatever I like, you know. And I said, well, Kathy, we've got to feed these, we've got to eat. And she said, well, I'll do it, Grandma. And she knew what I had up there. So we put it in the microwave and heated it up. And it's just marvelous the way she can watch the children. And then he'll keep the children, and she'll take the Rainbow Girls swimming. Then she takes them up to their cabin up on the Blue. And they stay all night. I don't know. She's a go-getter. I told her that little girl, Patrick wasn't, or Michael isn't related to her, but that little girl is.
Oh, so you sound like you were a go-getter though too.
Well, I had to be. You know, I had to be. I just couldn't stand. Oh, I had a dear that Professor Heath and his wife. I was ring bearer at their wedding. When I've got a picture I'll have to show you.
Okay.
When I was between 3 and 4.
Uh-huh.
And to this day, I can remember dropping that ring. And we were in the church, and Mama and Daddy about died. I can see Dad down on his hands and knees, and he got the ring all right. And he said, "Now, Margaret, you must be careful."
It's too hard to have a little kid carry a
They had
ring.
such a beautiful wedding. The arch was made out of columbines and wild roses. Well, we worked all day the day before getting those flowers,
Yeah.
so they gave. I have a picture of the arch, but I didn't get those things out. And their son comes from Albuquerque. He's been here twice this year. He comes and visits, he and his wife, and I'm just one of the family.
Well, that's really nice.
Oh, and that Mr. Heath,
I'll turn this
wonderful professor. We've gone to a